The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast arena, its curved walls rising high above the gathered delegates. 47 different species sat in their assigned sections, each group representing worlds scattered across the galaxy. The air hummed with quiet conversations in dozens of languages, but all eyes kept drifting to one particular table near the center of the room. Ambassador Kate Morrison sat alone at the human delegation table. Her gray hair was pulled back in, a simple style, and her dark blue uniform bore the simple emblem of Earth. She looked calm, almost peaceful, as she reviewed the documents spread before her. But those who knew her well could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers drummed silently against the metal surface. Today was the day the galaxy would decide humanity's fate. Council President Seth Carr of the Meridian Republic called the session to order. His tall, thin frame cast long shadows under the chamber's bright lights. "We are here to vote on Resolution 2387X, he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. The formal censure and isolation of the human species from all galactic affairs. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Some species nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Bellarian delegation looked troubled, their blue-skinned faces showing obvious distress. The first to speak was Counselor Vex High of the Zephyrian Empire. He stood gracefully, his pale features set in an expression of righteous anger. "Honored delegates," he began, "we cannot ignore what humanity has done to our peaceful galaxy. Their expansion knows no limits. They claim worlds without asking permission. They build colonies in dangerous regions that should remain untouched." Several delegates nodded in agreement. Vex High continued, his voice growing stronger. "But their greatest crime is the corruption of innocent species. Look at what they have done to the young races of the Kepler sector. These peaceful beings once lived simple lives, content with their small worlds. Now they build warships and speak of conquest, all because of human influence." The crystalline representative of the Astari resonated with frequencies that the translation systems rendered. "As discussed, humans are too emotional," the being pulsed. "They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. They are unpredictable and dangerous. Their very presence disrupts the harmony we have worked centuries to build." More voices joined the chorus of complaints. The Kaldorian trade delegate spoke of human merchants who ignored established routes and protocols. The vegan scientist complained about human researchers who took risks that put entire projects in danger. One by one, the grievances piled up like stones building a wall. Ambassador Morrison listened to it all without speaking. She made notes occasionally, but mostly she just sat and observed. When a delegate mentioned the recent battle of Proxima, she looked up sharply. The hegemony representative was speaking now, his mechanical voice cold and precise. "Captain Jack Sullivan's actions at Proxima were barbaric. Yes, he saved Bellarian civilians from the Ravager pirates. But his methods were excessive. He destroyed 17 Ravager ships when half that number would have been sufficient. He took unnecessary risks with his crew's lives. This is typical human behavior. They solve problems with violence when diplomacy would work better." Ambassador Morrison finally stood. The chamber fell silent as she walked to the central speaking platform. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I have listened to your concerns about my species. You say we expand too quickly. You say we take too many risks. You say we corrupt other species. With our influence," she paused, looking around the chamber. "Perhaps some of these things are true. We are not perfect." She activated a holographic display that showed star charts of the galaxy. "But let me remind you of a few facts. When the Kepler colonies were being slaughtered by the Void Runners 5 years ago, it was human fleets that arrived first to help. When the plague struck the Outer Rim worlds, it was human doctors who found the cure. When the hegemony faced rebellion in their mining colonies, it was human negotiators who prevented a civil war. The display changed to show trade routes and economic data. Human merchants don't just ignore your protocols. They find new ways to connect distant worlds. They take risks that others won't take, and they open markets that benefit everyone. The prosperity you all enjoy today exists partly because humans were willing to venture into dangerous, unknown regions. Morrison's voice grew stronger. You complain that we influence younger species. Yes, we do. We share our knowledge, our technology, our culture. But we also learn from them. The defensive shields that protect this very station were developed jointly by humans and Kepler engineers. The faster-than-light communication system you use daily combines human innovation with Centauri mathematics. She deactivated the display and faced the delegates directly. As for Captain Sullivan's actions at Proxima, he saved 3 million lives. The Ravagers showed no mercy to civilians. They were executing children in the streets when our ships arrived. Sullivan did what needed to be done, and he did it fast enough to matter. The chamber remained silent. Morrison walked back toward her table and stopped and turned around. But I understand your decision has already been made. The votes were counted before this session began. So let me save us all some time. She returned to the platform and spoke into the recording system. The human delegation acknowledges the concerns raised by our fellow species. We accept that our methods and philosophy may not align with the majority view of this council. Therefore, we will make this easy for everyone. Morrison's next words would be remembered throughout galactic history. Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We will remove ourselves from all Council territories within 6 months. We will cease all trade agreements, defense pacts, and cooperative ventures with Council members. We will recall our citizens from Council worlds and our representatives from Council institutions. The silence that followed was deafening. Several delegates looked shocked, as if they had not expected such a complete response. The Bellarian ambassador started to stand, but Morrison held up a hand. This decision is final, she continued. We will not appeal. We will not negotiate. We will not ask for reconsideration. You wanted the galaxy without human interference. Now you will have it. She gathered her documents and walked toward the exit. At the doorway, she paused one final time. I hope you find the peace and harmony you seek. Do not expect us to return when you realize what you have lost. The great doors closed behind her with a soft sound that seemed to echo forever in the stunned silence of the chamber. The formal vote was still taken, of course. The result was 43-4 in favor of isolation, with only the Ballarons and 3 smaller species supporting humanity. But it no longer mattered. Within hours, human ships throughout Council space began powering up their engines. Communication networks went silent. Trade posts closed their doors. Defense stations powered down their weapons and shields. Across dozens of worlds, humans packed their belongings and prepared to leave. The galaxy watched in growing unease as an entire species simply vanished into the vast darkness beyond the Outer Rim. They had wanted humanity gone, and their wish was being granted more completely than they had ever imagined possible. None of them suspected that this was only the beginning of the consequences their decision would bring. 6 months had passed since humanity vanished from Council space, and the first signs of trouble were beginning to show. Commander Lisa Hayes stood in the central control room of Defense Station Alpha 7, watching her screens with growing concern. The elegant displays that had once shown smooth operations across dozens of star systems now flickered with warning lights and error messages. Commander, her technical officer called out, "We're getting reports of system failures from 17 different sectors." The quantum processors are losing stability, and the communication relays are operating at 60% efficiency. Lisa frowned as she studied the data. Every failing system had one thing in common. They had been designed or improved by human engineers. The processors that managed faster-than-light communications, the gravitational anchors that kept space stations in stable orbits, the medical systems that automatically treated injuries across the galaxy, all of them bore the mark of human innovation, and all of them were slowly breaking down. "Have we tried contacting the human technical teams?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "All human communication channels are silent, Commander. They left no maintenance protocols or technical manuals behind." Across the galaxy, similar problems were emerging. On the trade world of Nexus Prime, merchant Prince Kalothrene watched his carefully built business empire crumble. The trading routes that had brought him wealth for 30 years were falling apart without human traders to maintain them. "The cargo shipments from the Outer Rim are 3 weeks late," his assistant reported nervously. "The Centauri grain dealers say they can't navigate the asteroid fields without human escort ships. The mining colonies on Kepler 9 have stopped all exports because their human partners left." Kylo's forearms moved in agitation as he paced around his office. Human traders had been different from other species. Where others saw only risk and danger, humans saw opportunity. They had opened trade routes through regions that other species considered impossible to traverse. They had found ways to extract resources from worlds that others had written off as too hostile or dangerous. "What about the new trade agreements with the Zephyrian merchants?" Kalo asked desperately. His assistant's expression was grim. "They refused to take the same risks the humans did. They want armed escorts, insurance guarantees, and hazard pay for any route that goes through unstable space. The profit margins have dropped by 70%. The problems were not limited to trade and technology. On the Joint Research Station, Kepler to 7, Dr. Mirthek of the Zephyrian Science Council stared at the empty laboratory where Dr. Elena Rodriguez had worked until recently. The human scientist had been his research partner for 8 years, and her departure had left a void that seemed impossible to fill. "The quantum biology project has completely stalled," he reported to his superiors during his daily briefing. Dr. Rodriguez took her research with her when she left. "Without her insights into genetic adaptation, we cannot proceed with the medical applications." The research station's director, a being from the crystalline Astari race, resonated with frustration. "Surely her work can be replicated by other scientists." "That's what I thought," Dr. Mirthek replied sadly. "But human research methods are unique. They combine intuition with logic in ways that other species do not." Dr. Rodriguez could see patterns in genetic data that our most advanced computers missed. She would make leaps of understanding that took us months to verify, but she was always right. Meanwhile, far beyond the borders of council space, humanity was anything but idle. Admiral Roy Peterson coordinated the largest expansion effort in human history from his flagship, the New Horizon. Free from council restrictions on colonization and resource extraction, human fleets had spread across unexplored regions of space like seeds scattered by the wind. "Status report," he called to his operations officer. "Excellent news, Admiral. Colony ships have successfully established settlements on 43 new worlds. The mining operations on the resource-rich worlds of the Sigma sector are already producing rare metals at unprecedented rates. Without council environmental restrictions, we can extract resources 3 times faster than before." Admiral Peterson nodded with satisfaction. The council had always limited human expansion, claiming they were moving too fast and taking too many risks. But risks were what humans excelled at, and the rewards were proving spectacular. Each new colony was a testament to human adaptability and determination. What about contact with other species? Peterson asked. We've made first contact with 7 previously unknown civilizations beyond Council space. 2 of them have already requested trade agreements. They seem fascinated by our technology and our willingness to explore dangerous regions. Back in Council space, the absence of human influence was becoming more apparent every day. The young, species of the Kepler colonies, who had been learning from human teachers and engineers, found themselves suddenly cut off from the knowledge they needed to continue their development. Captain Jake Morris had been the last human military advisor on Bellaria Prime. He had trained their defense forces and helped them develop strategies to protect their colonies from pirate attacks. Now, 6 months after his departure, the Bellarian defense minister contacted him through secret channels that bypassed Council communication networks. Captain Morris, the desperate message began, our outer colonies are under attack again. The Ravager clans have returned, and our forces cannot stop them without your guidance. The tactics you taught us work, but we need more advanced strategies. Please, can you help us? The message never reached Captain Morris. He was too busy establishing humanity's new military academies in the Outer Rim, where young humans learned to fight without the restrictions that Council peace treaties had imposed. Dr. Nina Foster represented another aspect of humanity's withdrawal. The brilliant medical researcher had been forced to abandon her work on the Crimson Plague when humanity left Council space. But now, working in the advanced laboratories of New Terra Colony, she was making breakthrough discoveries that could revolutionize medicine throughout the galaxy. The plague samples from the outer colonies show a completely new mutation pattern. She reported to her research team, I believe I can develop a universal cure that will work against all known variants. Her assistant looked up from his microscope. Should we share this data with the Council medical database? Dr. Foster shook her head firmly. The Council made their choice. They decided they didn't need human medicine. Let them deal with the plague using their own methods. As the months passed, more species began to question the wisdom of humanities. Exile. The Bellarians were the most vocal, having benefited greatly from human military assistance in the past. Their ambassador sent increasingly desperate messages to the Council president, warning of the growing pirate threat and the collapse of trade routes. The Centauri Free States, who had always maintained friendly relations with humanity, quietly began exploring the possibility of leaving the Council altogether. Their scientists and engineers had worked closely with humans for decades, and they understood better than most what the galaxy had lost. Even some Council leaders were beginning to have doubts. General Marcus White, the human military commander, who had coordinated joint defense operations, had left behind detailed reports about emerging threats beyond Council space. These reports spoke of ancient enemies stirring in the void, of machine intelligences that viewed organic life as a threat to be eliminated. Without human military expertise and their unconventional tactical thinking, the Council's defense forces seemed suddenly inadequate. Their strategies were based on formal military doctrine, but humans had always found ways to adapt and improvise in the face of unexpected threats. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the value of diversity and the danger of excluding those who thought differently. But pride prevented most Council members from admitting their mistake. They told themselves that the current problems were temporary, that other species would learn to fill the roles that humans had played. They were wrong, and the consequences of their error were only beginning to unfold. 2 years had passed since humanity's exodus, and the galaxy was falling apart faster than anyone had predicted. The problems that had seemed manageable in the first months were now cascading into full-scale disasters. The Ravager clans, sensing weakness in the Council's defenses, had united under a single war chief and launched coordinated attacks across 6 different sectors. Counselor Vex High of the Zephyrian Empire stood on the bridge of his evacuation ship, watching his homeworld burn. The peaceful cities of Veltar with their crystal spires and floating gardens, were being reduced to ash by Ravager bombardment. His people's philosophy of pacifistic resistance had proven useless against enemies who showed no mercy to civilians. How long until the orbital defenses fail? He asked his tactical officer, though he already knew the answer would bring no comfort. 6 hours at most, counselor. The defense grid was designed by human engineers 20 years ago. Without their maintenance protocols, we couldn't upgrade the systems or adapt to new threats. The Ravagers are using tactics we've never seen before. HFY closed his eyes in anguish. He remembered his passionate speech to the Council 2 years ago, when he had called humans dangerous and unpredictable. Now he would have given anything for their unpredictable nature, their ability to adapt quickly to changing situations. Human military advisors would have found a way to counter the Ravager attacks. Human engineers would have upgraded the defenses. Human diplomats might have even found a way to divide the Ravager clans against each other. But the humans were gone, and Veltar was dying. The evacuation ship shuddered as another wave of Ravager fighters strafed the fleeing vessels. Send a message to the human colonies, HFY ordered desperately. Tell them we were wrong. Tell them we need their help. His communications officer looked up sadly. I've been trying for 3 days, counselor. All human frequencies remain silent. They're not responding to any council transmissions. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds. The council's military doctrine refined over centuries of peace was failing catastrophically against the brutal efficiency of the Ravager war machine. Without human tactical expertise and their willingness to take risks, council forces were being systematically destroyed. On the research Station Kepler 7, Dr. Mirthek received news that made his crystalline heart sink. The Crimson Plague had mutated again, and this new variant was spreading faster than ever before. Entire colonies were being quarantined, but the disease continued to jump from world to world through trade routes and refugee ships. The death toll is approaching 50 million, his research assistant reported. The Outer Rim colonies are completely cut off. No one dares to approach them for fear of infection. Dr. Mirthik stared at the genetic data on his screens. The plague's mutation patterns were unlike anything in the medical databases. Dr. Rodriguez could have solved this, he said quietly. Her work on adaptive genetics was decades ahead of anything we have now. She understood how diseases evolve in ways that our computers cannot predict. Should we try to contact her directly? His assistant suggested. I have tried. All communications to human space are being blocked by our own isolation protocols. The same systems we used to cut them off are now preventing us from asking for help. The economic situation was even worse than the medical crisis. Kalo-3's trading empire had collapsed completely, taking thousands of smaller businesses with it. The cargo routes that humans had pioneered through dangerous space were now completely abandoned. No other species was willing to take the risks that human traders had accepted as routine. The mining colonies are shutting down one by one, his former assistant reported during their final meeting. Without human-designed extraction equipment and human engineers to maintain it, the operations are too dangerous to continue. The Zephyrian. Workers refuse to go into the deep tunnels where the best ore deposits are located. Kylo's once luxurious office was now empty except for packing crates. His forearms moved in defeat as he signed the bankruptcy documents. 40 years I spent building this business. The humans made it possible, and without them, it cannot survive. Meanwhile, beyond the borders of council space, humanity was thriving like never before. General Marcus White stood in the command center of New Terra's primary military base, reviewing intelligence reports that painted a picture of council collapse. His network of contacts and monitoring stations provided detailed information about the chaos spreading through his former territory. The Ravager clans have taken 12 systems in the past month alone, his intelligence chief reported. Council forces are retreating to defensive positions around their core worlds. They've abandoned the outer colonies completely. White nodded grimly. What about the plague situation? Spreading faster than their medical teams can respond. The latest estimates suggest over 100 million dead or infected. Dr. Foster's cure could stop it completely, but they can't ask for it without admitting they were wrong to exile us. The irony was not lost on White. Dr. Nina Foster, working in humanity's advanced research facilities, had indeed developed a cure for the Crimson Plague. Her team had created not just a treatment, but a prevention system that could immunize entire populations. The cure sat ready in human medical databases, but Council isolation protocols prevented any communication that might allow them to request it. President Amanda Clark reviewed the situation reports from her office in Liberty Prime's Capitol building. The woman who had once served as humanity's chief ambassador to the galaxy now governed a confederation of thriving human colonies. The transformation was remarkable. In just 2 years, humanity had established more colonies, developed more technology, and expanded further than they had in the previous 20 years under Council restrictions. Ma'am, her chief of staff entered with urgent news. We're receiving unauthorized transmissions from individual Council species. They're bypassing their own government and trying to contact us directly. Clark looked up from her reports. What kind of transmissions? Pleas for help, mostly. The Bellarians are asking for military assistance against the Ravagers. Several Centauri colonies want to purchase medical supplies. Even some Zephyrian scientists are trying to arrange secret research. Exchanges. The president leaned back in her chair, considering the implications. Are they offering anything in return? Some are. The Bellarians are willing to share their defensive technology. The Centauri have data on faster-than-light navigation that could benefit our exploration fleets. A few species are even hinting at leaving the Council entirely if we'll accept them as allies. Clark was quiet for a long moment. The Council had exiled humanity, but individual species within the Council were now desperate enough to break their own laws in seeking human help. It was a complete reversal of the situation 2 years ago, when humanity had stood alone against the combined judgment of the galaxy. Dr. Paul Martinez, now Director of Human Colonial Research, had made discoveries that would have revolutionized galactic civilization. His teams had developed communication systems that could transmit messages instantly across vast distances, terraforming technology that could transform dead worlds into garden planets, and defensive systems that could protect entire star systems from attack. But all of this knowledge remained locked within human space, hidden from the galaxy that had rejected them. The Council species don't understand what they're facing, he reported to President Clark during their weekly briefing. The Ravagers are just the beginning. Our deep space monitors are detecting movement in the void regions where the ancient machine intelligences sleep. If those entities wake up, the Council won't stand a chance with their current level of technology. Captain Steve Johnson led humanity's new deep space exploration program, mapping regions of the galaxy that the Council had never dared to explore. His discoveries were staggering. Dozens of young civilizations that had been denied Council membership, ancient ruins containing technology beyond current understanding, and resource deposits that dwarfed anything in Council space. We've made contact with the Free Worlds Coalition, he reported during his latest mission briefing. They're an alliance of species that the Council rejected over the years, mostly because of human influence during their development periods. They control more territory than their remaining Council members, and they're eager to work with us. The Coalition species welcomed humanity with enthusiasm that was completely different from the suspicion they had faced in the Council. These civilizations appreciated human innovation and adaptability because they had benefited from it during their own development. They understood that diversity of thought and approach was a strength, not a weakness. As the third year of humanities exile began, a galaxy was splitting into two very different regions. Council space was shrinking, plagued by disease, economic collapse, and military defeat. Human space was expanding rapidly, filled with new colonies, advanced technology, and willing allies. The choice made by the Galactic Council was proving to be not just a mistake, but a catastrophic error that was reshaping the entire galaxy. The council members who remained were beginning to realize the magnitude of their error, but pride prevented them from admitting it publicly. The fourth year brought catastrophe beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The ancient prison dimensions that had contained the Void Runners for millennia suddenly tore open near the galactic core. These machine intelligences, older than most civilizations and driven by a hatred of organic life, poured into normal space like a plague of metal and malice. Admiral Chun Volkov of the Council Defense Force watched in horror as his fleet was annihilated in the first engagement. The massive ships of the Void Runners moved through space like predators, their dark hulls absorbing weapon fire that should have destroyed them. His forces had been trained for conventional warfare, not for fighting entities that could phase in and out of reality at will. All ships retreat to Defensive Formation 7, he ordered desperately, but it was too late. The Void Runners had learned new tactics during their imprisonment, and the old strategies that had contained them decades ago were useless. Without human knowledge of their weaknesses and adaptive combat methods, the Council forces were helpless. Admiral, his tactical officer, called out in panic, "They're not just destroying our ships. They're absorbing the technology, learning from every weapon we fire at them." Volkov remembered the joint operations he had conducted with human commanders years ago. Captain Sullivan and others like him had fought the Void Runners before, developing unconventional tactics that had driven the machines back into their prison dimensions. But those humans were gone, and their knowledge had gone with them. On Liberty Prime, President Amanda Clark received the first reports of the Void Runner breakout with grim recognition. She had been present at the original containment operation 15 years ago, when human and council forces had worked together to imprison the ancient machines. Now the galaxy faced the same threat without human expertise. "How bad is it?" she asked General White during their emergency briefing. "Worse than anything we've seen since the original Void Runner War. They've destroyed 4 council fleets and taken control of 6 star systems in just 2 weeks. The council forces are retreating to their homeworlds, but even those won't be safe for long." Clark studied the tactical displays showing the machine advance. "What about our own defenses?" "Fully operational. Dr. Martinez's new shield technology should hold them off, and our fleets are equipped with the adaptive weapons that worked against them before." "But that's not the real problem." "What do you mean?" White's expression was grave. "The council species are sending us direct pleas for help, not through official channels, but through emergency broadcasts on every frequency they can find. They're bypassing their own government because they know we're their only hope." A Belarian ambassador had been the first to break ranks completely. Ambassador Cathara arrived at Liberty Prime aboard a damaged refugee ship, her blue skin marked with the stress patterns that showed her people's desperation. She knelt before President Clark in the Human Capitol building, abandoning all diplomatic protocol. "Please," she begged, "our worlds are dying. The Council forbids us from asking for human aid, but I cannot watch my people be slaughtered for the sake of political pride. The Void Runners destroyed our moon colonies yesterday. 3 million Belarians are dead, and our children are crying for help that our leaders refuse to seek." Clark helped the ambassador to her feet, her expression softening. "You were one of the few species that supported us during the exile vote. We haven't forgotten that. Then you'll help us?" "We'll help your people." But we won't deal with the council government that exiled us. Any assistance will be provided directly to individual worlds that request it. Similar scenes were playing out across human space as desperate delegations arrived from various council species. The Centauri Free States had already begun formal negotiations to leave the council entirely. Several minor species had sent secret envoys requesting immediate alliance with humanity. Even some Zephyrian colonies were quietly exploring the possibility of independence from their pacifist homeworld government. Dr. Nina Foster found herself at the center of the medical crisis. The Crimson Plague had evolved again, becoming more virulent than ever, while the Void Runners were spreading a different kind of contamination, a technological virus that corrupted organic neural systems. Her research team had developed treatments for both threats, but the Council's isolation protocols prevented any official communication. We're receiving thousands of medical requests through unofficial channels, she reported to President Clark. Entire worlds are going dark as the plague spreads. The Void Runner neural virus is affecting anyone who comes into contact with their technology. I could save millions of lives, but only if we can get the treatments to them. Clark nodded slowly. Prepare medical aid packages for any world that requests them directly. We won't let innocent people die because their leaders are too proud to ask for help officially. Meanwhile, Captain Steve Johnson was making discoveries in the outer regions that would reshape the balance of galactic power. The Free Worlds Coalition had grown into a formidable alliance of species that shared humanity's values of exploration and innovation. Together, they controlled vast resources and territory that dwarfed the shrinking Council space. The Coalition Council has made a formal offer, he reported from his flagship. They want humanity to take the lead in a new galactic government. They've seen what we've accomplished in just 4 years of independence, and they believe we're the only species capable of uniting the galaxy against the current threats. The offer was tempting, but President Clark knew it would mean abandoning any hope of reconciliation with the original Council species. It would essentially create 2 separate galactic civilizations, one led by humanity and its willing allies, and another consisting of the remaining Council members. Dr. Paul Martinez had completed work on the most advanced defensive technology ever developed. His gravitational displacement shields could protect entire star systems from attack, while his reality anchor devices could prevent the Void Runners from phasing between dimensions. The technology could save the galaxy, but it remained locked away in human research facilities. The Council doesn't understand what they're fighting, he explained during a classified briefing. The Void Runners aren't just machines. They're entities that exist partially outside normal spacetime. You can't defeat them with conventional weapons or strategies. You need adaptive technology that can match their ability to change tactics. Could we share the technology without formal diplomatic contact? Clark asked. Theoretically, yes. We could transmit the data on open frequencies and let them figure out how to build it themselves. But the construction requires human manufacturing, techniques and materials that they don't have access to. The situation was becoming impossible to ignore. Individual Council species were breaking away from their government's isolation policy despite the legal consequences. Trade ships from human space were being welcomed at Council worlds regardless of official prohibitions. Medical supplies and defensive technology were being smuggled through back channels by species desperate enough to risk their membership in the failing galactic government. General White reported increasing military activity as well. 3 more species have requested military advisors. The Belarian Defense Force wants to coordinate their operations with our fleets. Even some Zephyrian commanders are asking for tactical support, though they have to keep it secret from their government. The contrast between the 2 regions of space was becoming stark. Council territory was shrinking daily as the Void Runners advanced and the plague spread. Their technology was failing, Their economies were collapsing, and their military forces were being systematically destroyed. Meanwhile, human space was expanding rapidly, protected by advanced defenses and populated by species that appreciated innovation and cooperation. The Galactic Council itself was falling apart as member species either fled to human territory or isolated themselves on their homeworlds. The grand vision of a peaceful, unified galaxy governed by consensus and tradition was crumbling in the face of threats that required exactly the kind of adaptability and risk-taking that the Council had. Rejected in humanity, President Clark faced a decision that would determine the future of galactic civilization. She could maintain humanity's policy of isolation, letting the Council face the consequences of their choice. She could offer limited humanitarian aid while avoiding political entanglement. Or she could step forward to lead a new galactic order, based on cooperation rather than exclusion. The irony was overwhelming. 4 years ago, the Council had voted to exile humanity because they saw human influence as dangerous and destabilizing. Now that same influence was the only thing that could save the galaxy from the chaos that their decision had unleashed. The question was whether humanity would be willing to save those who had cast them out, and whether the galaxy could learn from its mistakes before it was too late. By the 6th year of humanity's exile, the Galactic Council existed in name only. The grand chambers, where 47 species had once debated the future of the galaxy, now echoed with the voices of just 19 desperate survivors. The mighty, crystalline forms of the Astari showed stress fractures that ran deep into their cores. The elegant Zephyrians bore scars from battles they had never wanted to fight. The proud Meridian Republic had lost half their territory to the advancing Void Runners. Acting Council President Thalvex stood before the remnants of galactic civilization in what had once been a cargo bay on Refugee Station Omega. The station itself was a converted trading post, hastily modified to serve as the Council's new headquarters after Galactic Prime fell to the machine intelligences. The irony was bitter. They were meeting in a facility that had been built using human engineering principles, one of the few structures still functioning reliably in their shrinking territory. "Fellow delegates," Thalvex began, his voice heavy with exhaustion, "we must face the truth we have denied for 6 years. Our actions drove away the only species capable of saving us from this crisis." The remaining delegates sat in silence. Many bore the physical marks of their civilizations. Suffering. The Belarian representative had lost 3 of her homeworlds to the Void Runners. The Centauri delegate spoke for colonies that no longer existed, consumed by the evolved Crimson Plague. Even the warlike hegemony had been humbled. Their mighty fleets reduced to a handful of ships hiding in the outer darkness. Humanity's methods, Thalvex continued, their willingness to take risks, their ability to adapt quickly to new threats, their unconventional thinking, these were not flaws to be corrected. They were strengths we should have celebrated and learned from. Councillor Vex High of the Zephyrian Empire rose slowly from his seat. The being who had once led the charge against humanity now looked broken, his elegant features marked by grief. "My homeworld burned while I watched from an evacuation ship. 3 billion of my people died because we were too proud to use the defensive strategies that human advisors had offered us decades ago. I carry their voices in my mind every day." The Astari representative resonated with frequencies of deep regret. Our crystalline cities were considered perfect examples of harmony and order. The Void Runners turned them into processing centers for their technological virus in less than a day. Human chaos and unpredictability would have saved us. But we chose death over admitting we were wrong. One by one, the surviving delegates spoke of their losses and their regrets. The patterns were always the same. Crises that human expertise could have prevented or solved. Disasters that human adaptability could have mitigated. Victories that human courage could have achieved. Every failure could be traced back to the absence of the species they had exiled. "We must send a formal message to humanity," declared the representative of the Kaldorian Trade Federation. "A complete apology for our actions and a desperate plea for assistance. It may be our last chance to save what remains of our civilizations." The message that was composed over the following days became the most important document in galactic history. It was signed by every surviving council member, each signature representing the surrender of pride that had cost them everything. The text was simple but devastating in its honesty. To the human colonial government and President Amanda Clark, we, the surviving members of the Galactic Council, formally acknowledge that our decision to exile humanity was an error of catastrophic proportions. We allowed fear and prejudice to blind us to your contributions to galactic civilization. We chose isolation over cooperation, uniformity over diversity, pride over wisdom. The consequences of our actions have brought our civilizations to the brink of extinction. We humbly request your aid in our darkest hour, not as a right we have earned, but as an act of mercy we do not deserve. We offer no justification for our past actions, only the hope that humanity's compassion exceeds our own failures. The message was transmitted on every available frequency, broadcast across the galaxy with the combined power of the remaining Council communication networks. It reached human space within hours, where it was received by monitoring stations that had been silently watching the Council's collapse for years. President Amanda Clark, read the message aloud to the human colonial assembly in the Great Hall of Liberty Prime. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of human colonies, as well as delegates from the Free Worlds Coalition and the many species that had joined humanity's expanding confederation. The silence that followed her reading was profound. Admiral Roy Peterson was the first to speak. "What are your orders, Madam President?" Clark looked out at the faces surrounding her. These were the leaders of a civilization that had grown beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. In 6 years of independence, humanity had established over 300 colonies, developed technology that seemed like magic to other species, and built alliances based on mutual respect rather than submission to authority. "Prepare humanitarian aid for the refugee populations," she said finally. "Medical supplies, food, shelter, and transport for any civilians who want to escape the war zones. We won't let innocent people suffer for their leaders' mistakes." "And the council government?" asked General Marcus White. Clark's expression was firm, but not cruel. "The Galactic Council made their choice 6 years ago. They voted us out of their civilization, and we accepted that decision. We built something better in the darkness they sent us into. The Council as a political entity is dead, not because we destroyed it, but because it destroyed itself through fear and prejudice." She paused, looking around the chamber at the diverse collection of species that now worked together under humanity's leadership. "But individual worlds and species that wish to join our confederation, on equal terms as partners rather than subjects, will be welcomed. We won't make the same mistake the Council made. We won't let fear or pride blind us to the value of cooperation." The decision was unanimous. Human relief ships departed for Council space within days, carrying medical supplies that could cure the plague, food that could feed starving populations, and defensive technology that could protect refugee ships from Void Runner attacks. But notably absent from the cargo holds were any diplomats or political representatives. Dr. Nina Foster's medical teams worked around the clock to distribute cures and treatments to affected worlds. Her research had advanced far beyond anything the Council possessed, and the relief effort saved millions of lives in the first month alone. But the aid came with no strings attached and no political demands. Captain Steve Johnson led evacuation fleets into the most dangerous regions of Council space, rescuing civilians from worlds under attack by the Void Runners. His ships were equipped with the reality anchor technology that could drive off the machine intelligences, but he made no attempt to establish human control over the territory he cleared. The response from individual council species was immediate and overwhelming. Entire star systems requested admission to the Human Confederation. The Balarians were among the first to formally abandon the council and join humanity as equal partners. The remaining Centauri colonies followed quickly, bringing their advanced navigation technology as a contribution to the alliance. Even former Council core worlds began to break away. The Zephyrian outer colonies, led by survivors who had learned a value of human pragmatism, declared independence from their pacifist homeworld government. 3 major Astari crystal cities requested human protection, offering their harmonic technologies in exchange for membership in the Confederation. The final irony came when Counselor Vex High, the Zephyrian who had once led the campaign against humanity, arrived at Liberty Prime as a refugee. He knelt before President Clark, in the same chamber where the Council had once exiled her people. "I have no right to ask for your forgiveness," he said quietly. "I led the effort to remove you from the galaxy, and my people paid the price for my arrogance. But I want to serve your Confederation in any way possible, to spend whatever time I have left trying to undo the damage I caused." Clark helped him to his feet, her expression gentle but firm. "The past cannot be changed, Counselor, but you can help us build a better future. One where diversity is valued, where different approaches to problems are seen as strengths rather than threats." As the years passed, the Human Confederation grew to encompass most of the galaxy. The old Council territories were either abandoned to the Void Runners or transformed into thriving worlds under the protection of human technology and the guidance of human values. The galaxy learned to appreciate the chaos and unpredictability that had once seemed so dangerous. The Galactic Council's final lesson echoed through history. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to walk away, and the deepest regret comes from realizing what you've lost only after it's gone forever. Humanity had left in silence, but their absence had spoken louder than any words ever could.